Let me share my screen. Okay, hi everyone. Today is the 29th of October. This is the CAPV bi-weekly meeting. Um, this is a Kubernetes sub-project and it goes by the code of conduct, which boils down to be nice to each other. I've sent the agenda link in the chat if you want to add your name to the agenda. So in terms of news and updates, I wanted to start first with KubeVip uh, 2.0. So yesterday with Dan and June, we worked on finalizing the release for KubeVip, and this release is going to add some interesting features and bug fixes. The first one is uh, the ability to give KubeVip a DNS entry. So KubeVip is going to resolve the entry for you and use the IP for ARP broadcasting. And it's also going to detect if there's a DNS update. So it's going to pick up the new IP and use it for ARP. Another interesting bug fix is, so it's a PR made by John, which updates the ARP packet format. June, do you want to speak about it?
Yeah, we have discussed this about like couple of weeks ago. So the ARP message during one of the testing in one of the network environments, what we saw is the during failover, the ARP message was not received by the other node, and eventually we figured out the ARP reply, the message is not like kind of a malformatted. Some of the fields are not aligned with the RPC definition. So we made a fix for that. The other one is at the same time, we added this alternatively to send a GARP request and also reply. So because some of the documentation we have written is the device may support either one of them because both are a available ways to send out this GARP broadcasting. Either reply or request could be used by some of the devices. Yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah, so this is going to be, so this is already released, and we did cut a release and push an image upstream, so you're able to bump your template. And we're also gonna bump the default versions on the flavors that we provide through GitHub for the next release of CatFood. Okay, so that's it for like KubeVip. Does anyone else have news or updates they want to share? Okay, so for topics of discussions, I added the first item before we can go to iteration on the failure domain proposal. The uh, so I started like some work to remove deploying the CPI, so the cloud provider integration from CAPFI. So ideally, now that we have CSI that is deployed as an add-on to cluster resource set, we'd want to move the CPI to use the same mechanism. This would allow us to reduce the surface of CAPV and having to update like CAPV whenever there is an issue with the CPI. So this is also enabling customization of the CPI if you have some specific configuration that you want to use. And like in terms of API, the APIs that are enabling you to deploy the cloud provider and the storage CSI driver are going to stay for V1 Alpha 3, but in V1 Alpha 4, we're planning on removing them. So this means basically that in V1 Alpha 4, you would need to migrate all of your existing templates to use cluster resource set. Obviously, like the default template are going to be updated, so you should be able to sync them and diff pretty quickly to apply the changes. Okay. Um, so I guess next, if does anyone else have any other topics before we go into failure domains? Yes, Chris.
Yeah, so I have a question about the recent kubevip and external load balancer functionalities for CapV. I don't see any place that how to use them or set them up is documented anywhere on the getting started guides or in any of the documentation whatsoever. Is that a, an acknowledged thing? Is it coming later and you're just supposed to keep using HA proxy for now? Um, like the section that says like when you pick an external load balancer flavor, like it doesn't. There's no reference to where you can even see what flavors are supported or allowed. I had to go through Go code to even figure out it's kubevip and external, whatever that even is.
So there are actually two flavors here at play. So there is the default one. So if you don't specify a flavor, by default, CapV is going to create a kubevip based control plane endpoint for you. So the default template has into the KCP resource a bunch of a file which gonna be then deployed into etc Kubernetes manifests. Uh, so there you'll have your kubevip pod that user that is going to deploy the vip for you. The other flavor, which is the external load balancer, is a flavor that enables users that have some specific controller against uh, they wrote against CapV to work. So basically, what is happening there is that you deploy a CapV, a normal CapV cluster, but nothing is going to happen until your controller, your custom controller, kicks in, lists the machine, and create the load balancer for you. So this is just an escape hatch for anyone writing integration against CapV. And I agree. I think we can make this much more clear.
It's not really meant for like a user to really run into. It's more of a develop against CapV sort of
Exactly.
thing then. Okay.
Yeah, I think we should clarify this pretty clearly. I don't think we did.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out like how do I pass in the IP address of the load balancer I've
I
set
don't
up,
think
and
we
it's
can
like
hear.
there isn't
I,
anything, right?
I don't think we can hear you, Nadir.
Speaking into more. Yeah, we don't have instructions for using. Oh, it's my headphones working. We don't have instructions for using this at all with the current templates. We still talk about HA proxy templates, etc. in the getting started guide. So that's all out of date and needs to be updated.
Okay, so uh, I thought that at some point I removed the HA proxy uh, bits in there. So so if you check the getting started on master, uh, I think so there is explicit call out at least that HA proxy is deprecated, uh, and that like you, I also removed like references from to the HA proxy OVA from there, so that we're at least um,
Yeah,
not
but like when I was reading it this morning, it wasn't clear that kubevip would do the right thing by default now,
okay.
for example.
Yeah, so if you just go to plus API 6 right now, it's still got HA proxy template. We're not saying like you need to configure a static IP for the VIP. So we need to improve our documentation game here. And I think along those lines, we should create a website like the AWS and Azure providers now have their own website. So I think we should do the right thing and do that also for CatV.
That sounds good. So one question, Nadir. Are you talking about the cluster API book specifically, or?
Yes.
Okay. So do we have like two places? Do provider have their own book plus they're referenced in the cluster API book?
So I think most people are hitting the cluster API book, so that quick start is out of date.
Okay.
And there is a way to include docs from other repos. So we're doing right now for AWS, we include the cluster API book as a source of truth, and we include it in our own site, just because that quick start's used by, it's got all the information for all the different providers there.
Okay. Can you Chris or Nadir file an issue? I can start working on this. If anyone wants to help, you're welcome.
I'll start the issue and I can probably help you get started. We needed to get some bits set up with the Netlify configuration, etc.
Sounds good. Oh, by the way, since we're still talking about HA proxy, I'm also writing. So if anyone is still using HA proxy as a load balancer, I'm working on the documentation to help folks migrate from existing clusters that have HA proxy as a load balancer to a setup using KubeVip. So I'm working currently on this. I'd expect to have something in the middle of next week. Okay, does anyone else have any other topics? If not, we can. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. I have another question about this DHCP for KubeVape. I know you guys like previously discussed about is it possible to use to get an IP from DHCP to use as the vape for KubeVape? Are you able to do that eventually for the infrastructure testing?
So for the infra, Nadir, do you have your hands up? Okay. So for the CI, we're planning on using the Metal 3 IPAM probably. There we do have ongoing thinking on using something that we have internally also, but we still need to discuss some of the details there. As for DHCP, ideally you can do that if you have a dummy MAC address to do a static DHCP reservation, but yeah, that would require at least a manual entry on the DHCP server to say, okay, for this specific MAC address, I want you to assign this specific IP.
Okay, cool. Yeah, in terms of the Metis3 IPAM, actually we have a controller which integrated it with Metis3 IPAM. So we are using that to do the static IP allocation for our own system. And we just open source that last week. So if you guys are interested, probably we can use that for the CI as well.
Yeah, thank you. It's on my to-do list to take a look at. The interesting challenge that we're gonna see is that for CI we need a standalone IPAM that is not going to we need an IPAM that is going to run on an infra cluster and that it's not going to be specific to a management cluster. So it needs to assign IPs to all of the management clusters that we create out of PRs, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I still need to check the controller and do some testing around it and see how it's gonna go.
Okay, cool.
Chris, do you have your hands up? Oh, okay. I think we can move to the failure domain proposal now. Okay. So last meeting I wasn't there, so I took a look at the recording plus the proposal. It seems like we're starting to converge on on something. So I'm super pleased here to see that we're making progress. So June, do you want to share the latest on this?
Yeah, maybe you can scroll down to
Yep.
the API section. I think the API already captured most of the discussion that we have. So the discussion initially, at least for last week, what we have is we will have at least two CRDs. One is for feeder domain and one is for the deployment zone. The feeder domains will capture like the zone and the region zone information. And we'll also define what is the underlying infrastructure that the feeder domain map to, right? Whether it's a data center, it's a compute cluster, or a host group. And data information will be obviously like not related to any specific Kubernetes cluster. At the same time, the development zone will like refer to the feeder domain and then define the placement constraints for this feeder domain within this specific zone. And those will include information like resource pool and data store. Then in the end, like how does the cluster like figure out which deployment zone to use? That is within the cluster spec will provide an array of the deployment zone names. Basically, in then our cluster controller will have all the information. Either it's the feeder domain information or the resource pool and the data store or the placement information will be available to generate the final like a VM information. That is the discussion basically we have.
Okay, so I guess this includes failure domains that we would want to use like around. So I'm still the only thing that I'm still unclear on is the vSphere failure domain spec. So here we're defining types of like failure domains, and based on the failure on the type, do we have any changes to the other fields that would need to occur?
Can you repeat your question?
So for the vSphere failure domain spec, I see that we have a type defined. So
yeah.
Whether be it host groups or compute clusters.
Yeah.
So I guess the other things here are they informational, or do they have any other play? Because if we think about it, at first it seems like the type and the inventory path are what we would need. I'm still unclear around what zone and region would need. Are they for the CPI?
Yeah, the region and the zone, as of now, I don't. The API level in the end may not use this region and zone information. That's what I'm thinking. Why do we need this type? The main reason is to support this host group type of a feeder domain, which is a little bit different, because the host group, when you provide a host group, for example, just for example, right, we use the host group name as a zone name. Mm-hmm. If you provided the zone name only to the feeder domain, we don't know where does this host group belongs to. We still need to know this parent compute cluster of the host group. And that is the reason we use this type together with the inventory path to really figure out like where is this compute cluster, where is the host group, and where should we place the VM.
Oh, like
the region. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. The region and the zone information, yeah, probably there. Another thing I'm missing from the API is when we configure the CPI or CSI, actually we need the like the tag category, not the actual tag. So though the configuration right now is within the, if I remember correctly, within the vSphere cluster, then there's the CPI configuration. Maybe we should extract those the label, like the tag category, move that information here to the vSphere, like feeder domain definition as well. So that we define all the feeder domain related stuff in a single place, not like it spread out into different structures.
Okay, so um, so I think it depends on the experience that we want to create. Do we want to create a holistic experience for how we're defining zone and zone and region for clusters in general? In that case, we might want to still have like the name and the name of the zone and the region. Or we can still, yeah, think about it in a way where it's defined in a proper way. But I feel like it concerns like it's around the same domain. So I would yeah, I would see them on that spec. Ben, Nadir, do you have any other thought on this? Yes, go ahead, Ben.
Am I right in thinking this is how we would end up annotating the nodes that are created, right? We you know, by convention, you'd have a label that lists a region and zone, and if that's right, and I'm assuming that is partly what the purpose this serves. There may be cases where you can't. You know, it's better to provide the user the ability to set whatever it is they want than try to have some convention that auto generates them. I guess that's one argument for doing it this way. Is that right, Jun?
Yeah, I agree. So this another purpose to have this is like for at least one of the things that I can think of it for future when we really have a separate controller which manage the feeder domain definition. That is in the future, maybe potentially we can do some configuration eventually. So currently, at least for the first step, what I'm thinking is those should be defined by the vSphere admin, and we just probably retrieve the information from the vSphere infrastructure. But in the future, we might be able to do some configuration on this side.
Yeah, in a future in which these are actually defined automatically as part of the fabric, you know, the kind of paravirtual story we talked about, where you know you define something in vSphere and these failure domain, these CRDs just appear. Again, you know, being able to get that information of the region, the zone that's been defined in vSphere out into this spec kind of makes sense to me as well. But the only question I have about this struct is in cases where you have string fields that can mean different things in different contexts, or you know, for certain contexts can be optional, it's also worth considering making like the data center, compute cluster, and host group structs their own sort of more strongly typed structs, and then having a sort of a composite struct that allows you to specify one or the other. I mean, that might make this too verbose, but it you know, if we have there are cases where I think that it's worth going down that path just to avoid confusion.
Yeah, and
Yeah, makes sense.
I can't raise my hand, sorry. So I think that it makes sense, especially that we can always have, you know, validation on top of it. So a validation webhook to say, okay, if you set this, you can't set the other two, and same thing. So I had another question. So it was regarding the creation of host groups. So as we know today, users are sometimes via admin are used to tag things at least at the host level to, you know, define zone and region. Do we plan on, like for host groups, do we plan on creating them if they're not there, or rely on the VI admin to tag and also create host groups?
Yeah, the current plan is we will differentiate the action on the host group and the VM group, and also the affinity rules. Because for this to work, we need three. We need a host group, we need a VM group, and we need a affinity rule between them. During the last discussion, the decision we reached is the host group needs to be configured by the VM admin, and the VM group and affinity rules will be configured by CapV. So that like host group still represent the fatal domain, which we agree that is still the admin's responsibility. At the same time, the CapV can still configure the VM group and the affinity rules, which will not only be used by the fatal domain ourselves, maybe potentially used by other features in the future. Yeah. So that is the decision that we have.
Okay, I see. So the reason I'm asking this is I'm thinking about like satisfying in both cases where we'd have VI admins that wouldn't want to share extra privileges with CapV because they're like the Kubernetes admin is not the VI admin. In that case, it makes sense. But in cases where VI admin are the ones that also deploy Kubernetes, it might make sense to allow CapV to create the host group if it's not already pre-created. Yes, Nadir?
Yeah, so I think the idea we discussed last week and was mostly Ben's idea is that we would have, it might be a function of VM operator. So we'd have, and that would continuously reconcile with vCenter. So it doesn't matter. So either the VI admin creates it in vCenter and it automatically pops up as something that we can consume, or you can privilege the operator to do it and allow the person with the Kubernetes API access to be able to create those resources, and then we'd reference them.
Yeah, which you could call an idempotent approach, right? You know, you end up with the same thing regardless of which approach you've taken.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, another thing that I was thinking. So, since we're removing the CPI for in V1 Alpha 4 from the vSphere cluster spec, we need to. So, hold on. If I go here and check CapV. So vSphere cluster. So some things might go away, which is namely the CPI config. So things like defining how the CPI is configured might go away. So we need to ensure that we're moving everything properly to this structure. If we need them to define failure domains, if not, then they're just gonna get removed in V1 Alpha 4. That's my only note.
Cool.
So how do you all feel about this? Do you think that we can start having a POC as soon as we open V1 Alpha 4 in the main branch? Ben, Nadir, Chris.
A thumbs up from me.
Yeah,
That
I
sounds
think
good.
I think the sooner that you have a POC, the sooner we can flush out any things which we might have missed here.
So for the POC, June, I'm gonna next week start the changes for V1 Alpha 4, meaning creating the types and whatnot, so that you have a fresh folder for V1 Alpha 4 to start on. And in the same time, I'm gonna create a 07 branch so that we can still release the 07 patches if anything needs to be released. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So other than that, do we have anything else that we want to discuss? Going once, twice, 3 times. Thanks all, and thanks June so much for this. Like, thank you for iterating on the doc and keeping up with the changes. I think that we really have something that we can build upon. So thank you so much for the effort.
Yeah.
Thank you all for the input. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
See y'all in 2 weeks.
All right.
Bye bye.